本期视频是印度的阿比吉特·查夫达在某播客节目中的一段访谈，主题是谈印度在当前地缘政治格局中的选择和机遇。他是一位印度理论物理学家、历史学家、地缘政治分析师、作家和播客播主，因其大胆激进的谈话风格受到印度网友追捧。作为长期以来印度人眼中的攀比对象，中国不可避免地出现在印度几乎所有的正经类谈话节目中，本次也不例外。他的观点可以说是印度人看中国的主流观点之一，无论对错，可以让我们了解对方所想，以供参考。下面请看视频。
I still want to reverse you back into China a little bit.
Yeah, sure.
We spoke about three very important geopolitical events that are happening at the start of 2024. The ongoing Russia-Ukraine conflict, the conflict in the Gulf, and then the African Niger coup that you spoke about at the start of this podcast, which kind of affects the geopolitical power that France holds in that belt. I remember in one of our older podcasts from last year or the year before that, you spoke about how we're probably heading into a three-pronged world, like three different teams.
Multipolar world.
Yeah. One pole would be Russia and China. The other pole would be America, NATO, etc. And the third pole is possibly a collaboration between India and France. So I'm beginning a whole new chapter here, beginning with what China's possible viewpoint is on these three conflicts which are important right now. The Gulf conflict, the European conflict, and the African situation.
Right. So the Chinese have significant interest in Africa. They want to use Africa as a place from which they get raw materials to fuel their economies. Copper, iron, coal, rare earth minerals, and so on and so forth. They want all that in raw form. They will then take to their country, process, and then turn into finished products. So Africa is just a place where they can get resources from. That's how they see Africa. You could say that. But even the Europeans in the West is doing the same thing. Maybe even worse, in a much worse form perhaps. So the Chinese view Africa as that. So there is this proxy conflict going on there between the East and the West. China and Russia on one side, and France and the US and whatever else on the other side. And then the the unfortunate African nations and the people are caught in the crossfire in between, and their suffering is endless. That is the deal with Africa. Now, when it comes to the Middle East conflict, the Chinese obviously are taking the side of Gaza and the Palestinian people. And they even have this, like I said, the port in Djibouti, which is in the Horn of Africa, near the Strait of Bab al-Mandeb, between the Red Sea and the Arabian Sea, that region. They have a port there, and they have warships there. And they have been, doing these anti-piracy patrols. But when a ship is taken over by pirates, the Chinese just sit and watch. They refuse to heed the distress calls. They just sit and watch. And the Indians go in and rescue ships from pirates. That's the kind of role the Chinese are playing there. There's an element of mischief making there, an element of glee. That look at the misfortune that's befalling you. That's the role the Chinese are playing, which is no role at all. Just observers and not doing their duty as anti-piracy operatives. So that's the deal. So when it comes to the Middle East conflict, the Chinese are taking the side of the Hamas, the Hezbollah, because they have ties, like I said, big investments in Iran. The Chinese have also made huge trade deals with Saudi Arabia and probably even the UAE, because there's a lot of oil there and they would like to enjoy that. They need that to fuel their economy. And the Saudis obviously are happy to do business with whoever is willing to buy their oil. So there is the element of that there. And the Saudis and the UAE are now part of BRICS. So is Ethiopia, which is, one could say, a relatively minor power comparatively. And there is Egypt, which is one of the major North African nations. And it's the bridge between Asia and Africa. India has excellent relations with Egypt. Now, we talk about China. So that's the Chinese angle in the Middle East region. They are anti-Israel, anti-West, pro-Iran, pro-Hezbollah, pro-Houthis, pro-Hamas. That's the deal. And they are not doing their duty as anti-piracy operatives. They're just sitting and watching. That's the thing. When it comes to the war in Europe, the Ukraine conflict, the Chinese are on the side of Russia. So the Chinese covet the plentiful gas that can flow out of Russia. Russia is what we call an autarky. An autarky is a nation that has everything within its own territory. Doesn't need to import anything from anywhere. The Russians don't need to import iron ore. They don't need to import bauxite, the ore of coal. They don't need to import oil. They don't need to import gas. They don't petrochemicals, agriculture, everything they have. They don't need anything. So Russia is an autarky. China is not. So the Chinese would like to acquire this plentiful Russian hydrocarbons, gas, oil, all that, whatever other minerals, resources they have. And they would like to turn Russia into a client state, a vassal state. My favorite word, vassal. My viewers will know that. So they would like to turn Russia into a vassal state, and Russia needs a pressure release valve, which probably is India. If India can, to some extent, counterbalance China, it's good for Russia. So the Chinese are on the side of Ukraine. I'm sorry, Chinese are on the side of Mr. Putin in the Ukraine war. They're anti-Zelensky. Zelensky is, so Ukraine is a proxy war between Russia and NATO. NATO is owned by the US. So the Americans wanted to turn this into a battleground and destroy Russia's fighting strength. Never happened. Instead of that, Ukraine got destroyed. And well, who knows how it goes on. One hopes the conflict ends sooner or later, because it's been terrible for the people of Ukraine. They've lost all their men. They've lost their young people. And so on. Yeah. So that's the Chinese involvement in Europe. They want, obviously, they had lots of designs and great ambitions for Europe. They wanted to interlink Europe and Eurasia with China. This great infrastructure network, road, rail, all that, shipping. They even bought, ports in various parts of the Mediterranean Sea, in Greece, in Israel, and so on. But India has also bought ports in these regions. So there's this thing also going on there. So that's the Chinese involvement in Africa, in the Middle East, and in Europe overall.
They're still the manufacturing hub of the world.
They still are, yes.
Making money there.
So yeah, so there is this initiative called China Plus One. So most of these nations that use China as a manufacturing hub are now diversifying their options. They want more options. So they want China. China is there, but they want China Plus One. So they're looking at one more nation from where they can source their manufacturing. That could be Vietnam, that could be Thailand, that could be India, that could be Bangladesh, whatever. Now it's a great opportunity for these nations, especially for India. The Chinese games are continuing, right? But India is rising, and as long as India manages this situation and ensures that we don't get embroiled in a major conflict, military conflict with anyone next 20 years, we're going to be unstoppable. And the longer India goes and rises, see, India's growth is the largest in the world right now. India is the only economy in the entire world that is not under any threat whatsoever of a recession. And India is rising, it's growing at 6+, 7+% per year, depending on the quarter and all that. Sometime, hopefully, will exceed that. As India's economy keeps growing, and as your economy grows, your military might also grows. The longer it grows, the more difficult it is for China to tangle with India, because it is going to guarantee that they're going to get a bloody nose and they're going to lose some of their hard-gained assets and all that. So that's the situation right now.